13. We sat in the small diner across the street from the building, a real drive of the place, with the grimy walls, coffee-stained tabletops, the smell of cigarette smoke always in the air. The food was too greasy, the drinks watered down, the coffee burned. It was only real good for quick service. Definitely not polite service, that was for certain. Here, said the waitress Dolores, as she dropped 2 cups of coffee in front of us, the liquids spring around dangerously and spilling over into tiny saucers. Below, she stormed off as if being required to do her job was the very last thing she needed right now. I picked up my coffee and blew on it. Evan chunked his down in one large glump. I wonder how that made his insides feel. The coffee might have been any good, but it was really hot. It had arrived just after the breakfast rush, so there were only a few stragglers sitting out. I didn't really have close attention to them. They were a non-late bunch, the old man sitting by himself staring out of the window and walking his mouth at random intervals, a fellow at the counter with his overcoat on and his fedora low on his eyes. He had glared at us through a pair of sunglasses he was wearing inside had we entered, as we were invading his personal home. But otherwise, we were alone. It was really private and intimidating. And despite the fact Evan and I had been alone together before, I felt a little unsure about how to act. How to talk now. In our certain situation, and almost had the feeling of date. That was, of course, a silly thought, and most untrue. Well, not that silly. I didn't exactly dislike him. I just thought he was odd. Yes, he is a few years older, but it wasn't that large of the age gap. He was even cute in his own unique way. I shook my head to stop that train of thought. What's wrong with me today? Evan leaned back and sank into the red plastic gate was torn just above his shoulder and some foam poked through, almost touching his ear. How are you feeling? I asked it, finally taking a sip of my coffee. I winced, still too hot. Can I be honest with you? He asked it. I nodded. Absolutely, he could. Of course. Honesty is one of my favorite things. Evan shook his head a little. He leaned forward onto his elbows, launching his fingers together, resting his chin on top. Okay, you're weird as heck. You know that, right? That surprised me. It was such a strange and polite thing to say, but that was quite normal for Evan. I was more flummoxed, however. That came across as anything other than a mild presence. I certainly didn't think I gestured at anyone generally in any meaningful way, where I could have an actual opinion about me aside from my intimidated family. I placed my coffee in the saucer. Really? What do you mean? Evan sat up again. He was anxiously moving from post to post. He now gestured with a hand toward the window beside us, out of the gray, cold world beyond it, or at least the street. This whole positive, sunny, happy-go-lucky kind of thing you do. Pollyanna? Really? That was the first. Evan continued. It's weird. It feels fake. How can you trust someone like that? It was just getting all this more confusing and not the least insulting. I tried to maintain my composure, but it's not fake, and I'm very trustworthy. What on earth will anyone think otherwise? Have I not proved myself reliable in the past week? Wasn't I not a good worker? And who was he to tell me who I was and how I behaved was anything other than when I started to feel a little angry, just a little, not to truly consider myself mad. But it did all seem rather unfair of him. It just seems like you live in this sheltered life, and you don't understand that things can be hard sometimes, he said, or that things aren't always positive or have a happy ending. I shook my head. That was just simply untrue. Oh, no. But I understand that. How old are you? Almost 18. I hated my age mattered so much to people in the city. In Brooklyn, people assumed I was a mature and responsible person, no matter what my age. No one had asked me my age in forever, maybe when it's my birthday. So you're a kid, that's my point. You hadn't seen things. He talked quickly, not with nervous energy, but with such a confidence in his own rightness. I didn't have time to put 2 thoughts together, couldn't defend my honor, before he moved on to his next question. Tell me, are you folks still alive? Still together? I knew he was leading the conversation somewhere, but all I could do was play along at this point. Yes? I answered quiet and dumbly. So there you go, that's the first thing. He pointed at me and didn't quite smile but looked rather validated. My dad never came home from the war. My uncle lost his leg. You never seen a severe limp before? Why did that have to do with anything? No, I said, but then my brain finally caught up with the conversation and I realized that was entirely true. I mean, well, I seen men with the missing body parts as much as anyone. Just because I don't have your experience doesn't mean I hadn't seen things. Evan waved that off. You have a home, a house, apartment, a house. Somehow I knew the answer was really going to fuel him further, but I still say it. After all, I do like honesty. See? That's well too. Not that didn't feel particularly honest. Do you grow up? Do you grow up without the home? At this point, I already knew the answer. Evan sighed. He leaned back again. I stared at the tear again. It was now so close it might tickle his ear. Do you see it? The rip in the swing? We move a lot. He said a little more thoughtful. I sometimes had to stay with my friends when things weren't so hot for Mom. Look, the facts are the facts. You have a home, a family. You were raised right. You had it good. There's no shame in that. But you need to understand that most of us raised in the real world, well, we don't trust people like you. He turned the flag down. Horace, the casual way he said, something that felt a punch to the gut, and then move on to something unrelatable, like coffee, and so very purposeful, and I nodded and unkind. That's not fair, I said. I'm tired of feeling attacked like this, and I was done trying to be polite conversationally. So embarrassed, I never thought he was a little dreamy. First of all, my world is a real world. It might not be in the real world, and I'm sorry for it, because it sounds like you. It went through a lot, but it doesn't mean that I don't exist here and you don't know anything about my life. First of all, my world is the real world and might not be your real world, and I'm sorry for it because it sounds like you went through a lot, but it didn't mean I didn't exist here and you don't know anything about my family, about what we've been through, about my father and the puddles. He turned back as Dolores made her way over. Puddles? Oh dear, have I said puddles? That was certainly not been my intention. My insides tightened. Would I slip up a silly childish reference to something far too complicated for someone like Evan to understand? I felt very visible all of a sudden, like everyone in the diner was looking at me. I glanced at the man in the trench coat. Was he staring at me from behind those sunglasses? No, he was probably just looking outside. No, not puddles, no. What I meant was, you don't know. You just don't know me. I'm not Pollyanna. Because I don't know there is sad stuff in the world. I am who I am because of it. Because I choose to see the good around me, even the other people, even you. Dolores arrived with a pot of coffee and refilled Evan's cup. For my part, I still hadn't taken another sip. Oh, even me. He smiled like that. The first time I ever see him smiled. I hated that I like it, especially since I wasn't liking him very much at the moment. I'm sorry, that sounded mean. Evan shook his head and drowned his second cup of coffee in one gulp. Hey, it's maybe the first time that I kind of like you. I shook my head and felt my cheeks burn. Well, that's awful. You should like me for me, or because I saved your life. Any other options? I shrugged. I'm a person, that's all. I think before you judge my life, you should know a little about it. He clanked the coffee cup back into his saucer. Okay, so tell me. Oh, then suddenly I realized I had absolutely no interest in doing so. If I wanted to impress him, I had to tell him sob stories, and my sob stories were not the ones that I was keen on sharing. Besides, I didn't think he'd understand. No one understood. Not really. Maybe at first they had care, and now nearly 8 years later, it was absolutely clear that everyone in our community thought my father should be well, past whatever issues have come home with. Really don't want to. That's okay, kid. I don't really want to know. There was that kid again. Clearly, Evan had spent a little too much time with Joey. I didn't much like Evan thinking of me as a kid, especially not as a kid. I'm sorry, can you stop saying that, please? That's what Joey calls me because he's old enough to be my dad, maybe even my grandfather. Couldn't be much older than me. It's weird, or at least consistency. I'm 20. There you go. But I live. I live too. I'm here, aren't I? I knew he didn't mean literally, but I almost knew it was a silly game of unmanship that was getting tedious. Yet I couldn't stop playing. Another lean back, I noticed he did almost particularly, and his energy changed. It's just different. I don't know. I see things, life-changing things. Where I used to work, the stuff we did there, it was terrifying and exciting. It's going to judge the world. I thought Mr. Drew had a grand vision. That's why I came with him here. Now I stuck with some closet. It was a surprising shift in conversation. For cutting me down, now that he wanted to share all these with me, maybe I wondered that that's the point of all this. On his invitation out for the coffee in the middle of the workday, on the small insults in my character, maybe all he wanted to share, something on his mind, and he had to work his way through a maze, a pointless illusion. Some people need to communicate as if by accident. My marvel, I couldn't seem purposeful or too eager. Maybe that's why I liked Joey so much. He was so ready and excited to share. He had no secrets. If this happened been the point, I certainly was curious to follow through. Do you work at the studio? Evan shook his head. Nah, that was before my time. He turned his gaze out at the street. I work at Gent. What's Gent? Intimidated eye contact. You don't know what Gent is? I was startled by the sudden intense bound in my ignorance. No, I confessed. Energy was pumping through his veins again. He was like a cart on the roller coaster, only I couldn't see the truck. I had no idea what we'd been going up or down. I just had to hang on for the ride. I suppose it leaned toward me, eyes bright, shining. It was just intense, and I pressed my lips together hard to keep myself from looking away. This is the first amazing factory where we did real science and work on the true technology advancements. It was nothing like these stupid gimmicks with these 3D glasses. It was the real stuff. Is this amazing factory where we did the real science, work on the true technological advancements? It's nothing like these stupid gimmicks with these 3D glasses. It was the real world stuff. That doesn't seem fair. I like the 3D glasses. They're wonderful, furrowed brow. You tried them? I nodded. I did. I mean, only for a moment. My little brother wanted them, of course. His stare only intensified. You did. And how do you feel? It was a strange question. I mean, fantastic. In all my boggle, I suppose. It was so exciting to watch TV, and Dad, I think Joey is really onto something. Evan shook his head. No, not about the glasses. How do you feel? Well, that was an even stranger question. I don't know. What do you mean? He looked at me closely for a moment longer, and I had absolutely nothing to say. I stared back anyway. Then he shook his head and once again, predictably, leaned back. Never mind. Look, I was just telling you, Mr. Drew used to have these big plans. These big plans. These grand ideas. Ever read his book, The Illusion of Living? I hadn't, but Joey told me about it. I really should. I like talking about Joey. You probably won't be able to get your hands on the copy. It went out of print ages ago. Oh, anyway, the point is he had these amazing ideas, and that's what inspired Jen to go in the direction they did and set everything into motion. But he didn't have guts. I don't know. He didn't follow through. He was so darned focused on these stupid cartoons. Even that was the point somehow. But that was never the point. I don't understand. I was feeling a little tired now. It was all so much. I felt woefully ignorant about all of it. Maybe I wasn't tired actually. Maybe I was just a little disappointed in myself. I know, I'm just a bad thing. Never expect a girl like you to understand. And then Evan again managed to find a way to spark that little fire inside me. It's hard to understand when you don't actually say anything. It's hard to understand when you don't exactly say anything. When you skid around the subject, it's easy to feel superior when you don't share. He raised both his hands in mock defense. Okay, cool your jets. All I'm saying is Jen really took things to the next level. When the studio went under, they kept going. You know, they understand the mission statement, and then, well, the factory had to shut down. And I thought, when Mr. Drew invited me to work with him, that we'll be starting again, looking toward a bright, exciting future. But it's all been, well, it's just a TV. It's all just TV, show business, numbers and audience viewership, sponsorships. Commercials. It's not what I want. It's never what I wanted it. But you're still here. He paused and thought for a moment, then sighed it. True. Well, what can I do? No one's doing that what Jen did. No one. It's like an alcoholic. You might give up the hunch, but the tastes are better than going cold turkey. I don't think it works like that. You get my point though? I nodded. It wasn't the best analogy, but I definitely understood the meaning behind it. I actually do. I think in a way, maybe it's the same for me. You? I laughed. You think I like fetching coffee when you get to invent brand new things that was never seen before? I don't know. I thought so. Yeah. It made sense. He assumed that. No, I like having a job. I love working in TV. But I'll admit it, I do get a little envious of the work you and Joey do, even the work Papa D does. Who the heck is Papa D? He works upstairs. It doesn't matter. I just think having a goal and working toward it is marvelous. Having a real purpose, a real drive, always wanted to find a purpose. And so even when I figured out getting to see you all, well, it's like that little sip of alcohol you mentioned. Pause for a moment. I think I like technology. I think I wish I could know more. It's the first time I truly laid this thought. It came together as I said it. Like the words were putting all these mixed up thoughts and feelings have been having into one solid idea. I felt butterflies in my stomach. Yeah? Yes, I said. I feel excited now, but also at a total loss. Now what? Now with this new realization, wondered what? I guess maybe I could go to school for it, but I wouldn't know where to start. He waved off this idea. He liked to do that. Forget school. They teach you what they already know. And what they know is never that much to begin with. Nah, you want to learn? Well, stick with me, kid. Rose, I remind him. What? Call me Rose, please. It's Joey's thing. It doesn't suit you. He shook his head at me again, but I felt now like we had some kind of an understanding that we had come out the other side of the strange diner experience with something new, something positive. You do like your honesty. I do. I smiled. That's okay, I guess. And he smiled too. You really teach me? Sure, why not? I have nothing better to do.